Most of the time, when I talk with other makers about taking that leap to go full-time, we talk about the logistical things. Having a bit of a savings put away in case of emergency, understanding your numbers to make sure the pricing can support your necessities, getting an email list going in order to have ownership over your audience, etc., etc., etc. It's a very long list and clearly the bulk of conversations for the past 2 years on the podcast. And while these things are indeed important, the unsung workhorse of being able to make a living from the things you make, the thing that often is the difference between someone figuring out a new solution to yet another issue of self-employment, or staying creative during a financially tight time, even getting strategic about how the heck to make the business continue to work when the rest of the world is shouting at us all about a recession. The thing that carries most of us through the uncertainty is not a spreadsheet or some new planning journal to buy. It's our mindset. Honestly, a spreadsheet would be easier because our mindsets are these amorphous, sometimes mysterious, but oh so impactful things floating around in our brains, affecting how we make decisions. And let me tell you, your mindset can make or break just about, well, anything. But definitely your perspective and approach and even success as an independent maker or small business. Battling the ups and downs of all that's happening in our heads, particularly when it comes to feelings of scarcity, that, spoiler alert here, social media is essentially built to enhance the feelings of scarcity. Well, all of that is exactly what Tzipporah and I wind up talking about amidst sharing the realities of her life as a mom of 4 with a husband who is also self-employed. It's a photographer, potter, partner extravaganza this week, my friends. And we're going to get into all of it right after a quick word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Kara, content creator and Facebook wrangler for Amico Brent, bringing you ideas and support for your creative adventures every day. This week's episode is brought to you by Amico Brent. Find your favorite Amico glaze at your local distributor. Happy glazing!
Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the show where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, seasoned entrepreneur of 13 years, Rebecca Ikis Kara. This is real life.
I was about to say, this is just real life. Exactly.
Exactly. Like, this is exactly the whole point of why we're talking to her. I'm like, hold on, pause on the story until we hit record. We're just going to do a cold open on this one and go.
Yes. Well, the thing is, I have one kid home sick on the bed there, on the couch there behind me. And he said hi. And one is waiting at the door for my husband. My husband was supposed to be home. He went mountain biking this morning. He's like, I will be home by 12. Okay, it's 12:01. He's not home yet. And then he was up sick in the middle of the night. And this is just real life. Like, I can't plan literally anything because this is.
And I also just realized these are all the questions I was going to have for you, because when I realized at one point, like watching something on Instagram or whatever, I don't know what it was, but I was like, hold up a second. There are many children that you're managing and parenting and mothering. I said managing just felt like the most right word in that moment.
I don't know. It's so much more than managing, and it's so much more than parenting. It's so much more than, it's all of the things. It's like every possible thing. And yeah, we have 4 kids.
But then you told me your husband is also self-employed and is a photographer, so we connected on that. But I was like, hold up, you're also living in New Jersey, which is not exactly the cheapest place in the country.
No. Not cheap. It's a lot, to say the least. It is a lot. You know what? It's like, it's a choice. It's hard to make a choice to not have financial consistency, but this is like way off topic, but it was only recently that I had an experience with somebody who is like really not doing well emotionally. They have family that's really not doing well health-wise. And I just turned to my husband and I was like, I will struggle every day of our lives financially. I will pick that and have our health and have our happiness and have our like emotional security over financial security any day of the week. Hi. Okay, here comes the next one.
Yep. It's fine. Hey, buddy. I see you a lot on Instagram.
Yeah, because he's the one that's home with me right now.
Okay, so to give everybody since we just dove in, I like emotionally agree with you. I know that Francesco here, if he heard me say that out loud, would be like, you don't practice it very well.
Not easy to practice that.
No, because I'm always worried about that. And then I'm always like, if a job comes up, I will take it to be like, oh, well, we weren't planning on this. I'm going to take it. And then a week like this week so to put it into perspective, and you'll appreciate this from a photography gig standpoint, I got an inquiry a couple of months ago for a multi-day corporate event. Fantastic. Great paycheck, right? And corporate's easier than weddings, whatever. So that's 3 days out of the week that I'm on site somewhere. And then I have all the processing afterwards. And the following weekend, we had the first wedding of the season. And next week, I have the massive corporate event I do every single year, which is another 3 days on site. So even though I had the dates available to do the other shoot and I did it, I'm in like full scramble mode now, right?
Oh, yeah. You want to say yes to everything because you want to, and this actually like does bring in the topic that we started, we wanted to talk about scarcity, but like that was way back when you were like, we should talk about that. But we feel like we have to say yes to everything because how can we turn down an opportunity? And when it comes to photography, and you know this, and I don't need to explain this to you, but my husband, he had 2 weddings, Memorial Day weekend. He had Sunday, he had Monday. And he usually says, I will not take back-to-back weddings because
it's terrible.
It's brutal. He would left at 8 a.m. and came back at 1 a.m. both days.
Oh, that's worse.
Those are long days. That's crazy town.
Mine are at least like 10-hour days shooting and then travel.
Yeah. And travel. So he had to leave real early. And he got back real late. And because it's also like when it's a holiday weekend, people are like, we don't have anything to get home for. Let's make this long. You know what I mean? But anyway, it's brutal. And then it's like, you feel like you need to say yes because you feel like you have an opportunity coming at you. And like, if I don't say yes to this, then who knows what opportunities I'm going to be missing afterwards. Like maybe this could bring more opportunities. It's a vicious cycle, feeling like you need to say yes to everything and take everything on. But like, it's not sustainable. And it's like, what are we living for? Are we living to work or are we living to live and working so that we can, have a great life?
Exactly. And I'm curious to learn more about how this feels in the ceramics industry because coming from weddings into ceramics, it feels so much calmer. Like it feels the urgency doesn't feel the same level that I feel in weddings, but I don't know if that's just because I'm new in this industry. And I'm 13 years into weddings where I'm like deep down the rabbit hole. But like, for example, I don't feel the crazy urgency of, well, I still do, but I'm unlearning it. That like, if I don't respond to someone's email in 2 days for a photography gig, I'm like, I've probably lost the gig at that point. Whereas communicating with you all, like just for the podcast, it's kind of like, yeah, no worries because people aren't on a computer all day long. So it's normal. And I'm like, oh, what a nice relief.
It really is. So I feel like I am not coming from the photography world, just to answer your question. You're coming from the photography world. I'm coming as an outsider watching my husband hustle. And for me, the difference between the photography world and the ceramics world is a deep sense of community. It feels much more community-based. And I don't know if that's because I'm being selective on how I experience the ceramics world or if this is just what it actually is, but it feels much more about connection and community and lifting each other up in general, I will say. When it comes to like, really trying to make a living out of ceramics, I think it's a whole nother like train of thought to go down. But I think that in general, it's calmer because it's more about connection and community as opposed to the photography world. It's like, what does that even mean? Connection and community within another, form of work. What does that mean? Because with photography, it's like the person, the client is getting married, hopefully one time, and they're hiring a photographer, hopefully one time. And then that's it. And then that client, if they like you, is now going to recommend only you to the rest of their friends and fam. So when it comes to pottery, though, nobody has one mug in their house and nobody has one bowl and nobody is like, I am only going to be buying things from one person. That's not how it is. So when it comes to being able to connect with buyers or customers in the pottery world, or being able to connect with people who love pottery, I feel like there's so much more potential for like multiple layers of connection, different potters connecting to different makers, connecting to different buyers. Like, it's just all about that community and connection, as opposed to like the competition side of it. And obviously I can't speak to how the competition side of things run in the photography world, but
yeah, I think it's interesting because the one plus, quote unquote, we have for connecting from photography standpoint is like early years for me. A lot of my gigs came from other photographers because it's date specific, right? So if I'm booked on June 24th, for example, I'm booked. Like, I can't take another gig. And so therefore I'm going to refer it out to a friend of mine that I trust, because then somebody's going to have a great experience with that friend. They're going to remember that I helped them. So I think there is community in the industry, but I think on the whole, the culture around events has such this fallacy of urgency, you know, like that there's emergencies. And it's like, there are sometimes real emergencies associated to events, right? If, heaven forbid, an elderly relative has a health problem during your reception, I have had ambulances called. That is an emergency, right? But me not responding to an email within 3 days because you want to book your photographer this week because you want your engagement photos next week because the leaves are changing and it's fall and you love fall, like, that's not an emergency.
no, right. And also another thought that I just had is that when it comes to photography and the customer or the client, it is all about them. Whereas, like, yes, they like your work, but it's not so much like, you're an artist and I really, really value and appreciate what you have to offer. It's like, this is my day. This is my engagement session. This is what I want. You know what I mean? Or whereas like with ceramics, we're putting out this art that we've put our heart and soul into, time, blood, sweat, and tears. And then somebody else is like, wow, that looks amazing. I want it for my house. I want it for my mom. I want it for my friend. And it's like, it's a different side of things. We're looking at it from the total different side of things.
That's a really good point. Okay, we could keep going down the ceramics photography rabbit hole because it's literally both of our lives. I'm going to pause and actually have you introduce yourself to people who don't know who I'm talking to, and we'll go from the beginning.
Okay. So real quick, I mean, not much to say really. My name is Tzipporah. You might see me on my pottery account, Seaport Ceramics. I am full-time mom of 4 boys. It is so much fun. It is my life. It is everything. I'm so grateful. And then I am a part-time potter and teacher of wheel throwing. So it started in 2019. I know it's like I'm a baby potter, basically.
Wait, what? What? Back up. I need more context.
This is a crazy story. Like, how much time we got? Because
we got time. Do the story.
This is a crazy story, and I'm like gonna try and leave out the unnecessary details. But I had 3 kids at the time. 2019, I was flying to my best friend's wedding in Israel. It's a 12-hour flight. I flew there with my 3-month-old youngest at the time, and I solo. And then
bless you.
I flew. We were experiencing some like bizarre medical mystery with him, which thank God turned out to be nothing, but it was a medical mystery. Basically, the soft spot on the top of a baby's head is supposed to be flat or a little bit caving in, and his was bulging, which never Googled. Don't do it, everybody. But I Googled, and it was like immediately like impending death. And I was petrified. We went to the doctors. We went to the emergency room. We got tests. This was back still in America. And they were like, we don't know what's up. Everything's fine. Like, there's nothing. I flew to Israel. It happened while I was in Israel again. Had to go through like the health system in Israel to try and like get him do whatever tests they didn't do in the US. Whack-a-doodle. Thank God everything was fine. Got on a plane back home to the US. And I was like a hot mess because I was like, is he okay? Is the air pressure going to make a difference? I don't know. Who knows?
Right? I also get motion sickness. So like you just don't feel good on a plane.
And it's a 12-hour flight. And I was sitting next to this lovely middle-aged gentleman who was so helpful and so kind. and we started chatting because that's just what I do. And 8 hours of the flight, we schmoozed the whole, like that. That is a long time.
We are the same person.
Turns out he's a psychiatrist. So like we went deep. I'm getting like free sessions back to back to back because it's so many hours.
That's amazing.
And he said to me at one point, like, I'm curious why you're blacking out some of your childhood memories. And I'm like, well, I mean, trauma, but everything's fine. Thank God. But, it's something that everybody experiences, trauma in some way. And he was like, okay, well, through the trauma, did you do anything creative? And I was like, what? And he's like, he has this whole concept. And let me just preface this. By the way, I need to just interrupt myself and say, I had a wonderful childhood and my parents are incredible and we're showered with so much love and care. And my 10-year-old in the background, that's true. It is true. They are absolutely the best. And I'm so grateful for them. Everybody experiences something. So
yes, agreed.
So he said, I have this concept in my practice where I believe very firmly that creativity is the connection between mind, body, and soul. And he said that getting through any tough spots and anything like that, we need something creative to ground us and bring it together. Do you do anything creative? And I said, did you do anything creative as a child? And I said, I don't really think so. I don't know. And he said, well, what about now? And I was like, not really. And he's like, you need to find something to do with your hands. And I was like, well, I cook, like for my family. And he's like, no, you do that for your family. I was like, well, I also do it for me because I love food. But he's like, no.
It's not like a relaxing thing the way it is for Francesco, where it's like, that's his
something art. And I was like, I'm not really a creative person. And he's like, you can find something. I know this is turning out to be great. Good commentary. And so I got off the plane, didn't take his contact information or anything. But it was like,
do you know his name? Like, do you even know?
Wait. Okay. Well, don't worry. Detective Tzipporah was on it. Okay.
All right. Yep.
So after that plane ride, so that was in April, and it was like a worm in my brain, couldn't get it out, had to find something to do. Always wanted to take a wheel throwing class, took a one-time class in June with one of my best friends. We took it together and we were hooked, both of us.
And this is 2019.
2019. So June 2019, started taking back-to-back classes. Around December 2019 or early January 2020, the studio that I was learning at, the owner asked if I would teach, which I was like, yeah, sure, I would teach if you think I'll be good at it. And she's like, oh yeah, you'll be good at it.
I was like, well, that was quick.
I know. It was like the kind of thing that, and it's so wild to think, I would have never touched clay had somebody not triggered something and completely altered the trajectory of my entire life. And so obviously started teaching, and it was like maybe February time, like pre-schmovid. And I was like, I need to find this guy. I knew his first name. I knew where his practice was in Israel. Like, I knew very random facts. We were talking for 8 hours, and I was like, I'm going to Google this. I'm going to see what I could find. And let me tell you, we found him. Oh, I sent him a message on Facebook, and I was like, hi, I don't know if you remember me. We sat on a plane together. We had a nice schmooze. I have something that I'd love to share with you. Do you have an email address? I was like, I don't want to do this over Yeah. And he responded, I'm very busy, and with his email address. And I was like, oh my God. What do I do? Do I reach out? Do I say something? I was in a panic. Right. My husband's like, he probably thinks you want a free session from him. And I'm like, I don't want a free session from him. I want to send him a gift. I want to say thank you.
It's like, you had 8 free sessions.
I know. I'm good. I'm good. All of it's solved. Everything's worked out. Anyway, I want to say long story short, but I've already been chatting about this for a while. So medium length story short is that I ended up reaching out to him. He was so grateful. And then post-COVID, my husband went to Israel this past November, and I was going to send him something in pre-COVID, but then COVID happened and our trips got canceled. And I sent him a gift. I sent him a gift last November of something that I made. And I was like, you literally shifted everything for me. Everything. My entire life shifted because he gave his thoughts. We had an open and honest conversation on a plane, and he completely altered my life. I could have never dreamed. This was never my plan, and you just never know. You don't push yourself out of your comfort zone. You never know what you're going to find. How wackadoodle.
And also, I feel like it almost has to come from a stranger, right? Because our loved ones, our close relationships, as you would expect, kind of protect us, right? They guard us. And so they're not there to necessarily push us outside of our comfort zone, because that in a way can push them outside their comfort zone, which maybe like I experienced this a reasonable amount. Also, lovely parents, friendships, all of the things. This is not a dig to any of you. Hi, Mom. But, you know, they get scared when we do scary things because they love us. That's normal. Like, one of my absolute closest friends probably once every 3 to 4 years hears me consider applying for a normal job and giving all of it up and just like going and getting flipping healthcare already.
Relatable.
As you do. And so like I put her through this conversation probably every 3 years, and I know the like uncertainty of our self-employment. She's like, yeah, why don't you just like it's sensible to her. And so, but that's not ultimately I stick with it, obviously, and we just keep going. It's just interesting that like I'm thinking about those conversations I've had with close people, that it's fascinating that your life changed because of a conversation with a very qualified stranger, I should say.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? It's also interesting is that and like you're saying, if a family member would say to me something like, you know, I think that you need to find a creative outlet, it wouldn't even stay in my brain. It wouldn't even it wouldn't become something that I now need to think about. It would just be, I didn't ask you, you know what I mean? And it's along the same lines as what you're saying. And it did come to a stranger saying something, and it did stay in my brain, but then it also was up to me, ultimately. Am I going to do something about it? Am I going to, because he didn't push me out of my comfort zone. He just gave his opinion. And then I was the one that then really needed to step outside of that comfort zone and say, I'm going to try something new. You know what? In all likelihood, I'm going to suck at it and it's going to be awful, but I'm going to have tried something new and it's going to be fun. And you know what? I tried something after that. It's like a cycle. Oh, I tried something new and I actually love this. Maybe I want to try something else new. Maybe I want to see what else I might be good at, or what else I might, you know, derive so much joy from, even if I'm not good at it.
I was like, or also like you try something new, you do suck at it, but it's actually not, it doesn't result in death. You can suck at things and it's fine.
Yes. And not only can you should, because we all need to not be good at things. I mean, my husband is literally not good at anything. He's just, what's he not good at? What's he not good at? Nothing. No, he's so good at cooking. He's so good at sports. He's so good at he did pottery for the first time and he crushed it. Like, I'm sorry. So he's not that guy. But
you're not allowed in the studio anymore.
He's not allowed. But you know, I had never played tennis before, and I was like, let's go play tennis. And guess what? I was awful. I expected myself to walk on that court and crush it, and I did not. But it felt so good to try something new, push out of my comfort zone, and fail. And know that, like, I'm okay. It doesn't affect my worth. It doesn't affect my quality as a human. I can be good at some things. I could be awful at some things, and I'm still me. I feel good about myself. You know what I mean? Like, it has it doesn't mean anything in the long term.
So just walking back the timeline, prior to 2019, full-time mom of 3, period. I mean, that's a big period. That's a very big job.
No creative outlets. Well, I was working prior to having kids, and then I was working when I had my first, and then once
I've got to ask, what in the world were you doing? Because now I'm just blown away by the fact that this has only been since 2019.
Before I had kids, and then like when I had one, I was teaching and in a preschool, not my thing, hard pass, no thank you. I realized very quickly that I am not the person that can have patience for other people's children and also then have patience for my own. So once I was highly pregnant, just about to have my second son, I was like, I need to be home. And yeah, it's a tremendous financial sacrifice. You end up like really just like winging it in terms of like, what can we afford? What are we doing? You know, how are we managing this?
Because was your husband always a photographer? That was always like
He was a photojournalist first, and then he became an event photographer once he had a family and needed something a little bit more predictable. Which is ironic because it's actually not predictable at all, but it's more predictable than photojournalism.
And you do at least know your schedule ahead of time. Yeah. I mean, there's so many people that I know who came out of newspapers or were like White House photographer, Pulitzer Prize winning White House photographers that now shoot weddings.
Yeah, exactly. It's like just a smidge more control over the situation. And then I was home, and then I was home with all the kids. or 3 of them. Once I had my third, that was like really like in the throes of burnout because and I feel like everyone can experience burnout in any way, shape, or form in any field that they're in. But motherhood is one of the, least appreciated, least understood fields of work. We don't get paid. We do 15 people's jobs. There's no time off. There's no break. It's hard. It is hard. It is incredible. I've done it 4 times over by choice. It's amazing. It's also hard and there's no break. So finding this was everything for me. Yeah, it was the first time I found something for me, just for me. Even when I was like, and this is so funny, now I'm more active physically than I was, but I started doing yoga after I had my second kid. And I was always like, I'm never going to do yoga. I'm not that person. I'm not like good at it, but it just feels really good for my body. And after I started doing yoga, I was like, I don't know, like, why am I not burnt out? Like now I'm doing something for myself. Why am I like not fixed? Like, why isn't it better? Okay, just not how it works. That's why it's Tzipporah.
We're hitting all the points today. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, I just got back from a 3-week vacation. That was supposed to solve my burnout.
Oh, yeah.
And
No.
I'm worse?
Yeah. Well, the vacation reminds you what life is like when you don't have stress. And then you come back into it and you're like, oh, God. Real life again. It's worse than I remembered. I think that there's no solution to burnout except like thinking about yourself and what you really need.
Well, and the conversations I've heard on it with other podcasts that I listen to are these people talking about how they tried to slow down or they tried to take a little break and it didn't solve it. And so then they realized they needed to take a bigger break. And I'm like, okay, but in whose world do you get to take 2 years off of work? And literally, like the woman I most recently listened to was like, I'm still not back to, she was working 60 hours a week beforehand. And now she's like 25 hours a week. And she like, that's her, like she kind of maxes out. But it's been like multiple years. And I'm just like, okay, but how does it work? Because going back to the finances, like as much as emotionally I want to believe in like other things, it's like we still have to like buy the groceries at the end of the day. So how does it work?
I know. I'm curious if people, and obviously I don't even have any insight into this because we're 2 self-employed people, but I'm curious if people that are in like more corporate jobs, if they feel burnout I'm sure everybody feels burnout, but if they feel burnout the same way that creatives feel burnout, because I wonder if it's burnout from like the grind versus burnout from trying to be creative, trying to be inspired. It's like I wonder, I don't know. I'm curious if it's a different kind of burnout. And then if it's easier to just push through the grind burnout, where you're just like, all right, I have my 9 to 5. I don't have a choice. I have my life after that. And that's where I find my joy. Whereas creatives were finding joy in what they were doing. And then they burned out from that, from the lack of inspiration or from the lack of consistency or whatever it is, lack of creativity. And then like, we need to refine joy again in what we've been doing creatively, as opposed to needing to like have something else that brings us that joy. Do you know what I mean?
It makes sense to me. I also think the way I think about it is so wrapped up in my time in like, I have a lot of ideas. I'm not burnout because I don't have ideas. I have so many ideas, but I don't have enough time to implement them. And I'm frustrated because I'm stuck in like,
where do I start?
That, or also I'm still being pulled in so many directions because I've got half of me is still in the events world because that's our main source of income. But then the other half actually really wants to be over here and like doing more things like this conversation, doing more resources for potters on photography, on business, on like our community, which is a beautiful space, and actually making pots. Like there's all these are the things I actually want to spend time on, but I have to kind of still keep this other thing going. And I have so many ideas, I can't implement them all. And that's where it's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Are you burnt out from your events jobs?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so tricky because maybe you don't feel like you have a choice. Like you have to keep doing those things. Yeah.
Well, and at the very least, I have to fulfill the contracts I already have. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe there's a magical world where we have a conversation to say, okay, I'm not going to take any events in 2024. I'm not necessarily saying that out loud. If any of my event colleagues are listening, still kind of need some help.
This is a hypothetical. Don't take her literally.
But, even if we were to say that today, I would still have things that are contracted through December. I'm looking at my calendar right now. Until December 9th of this year.
Yeah.
Right? And okay, some people might say crisis moment, you're burnout, you break contracts, but I'm not going to do that.
No, you're not breaking contracts. And even if you would say, and let's say 2030 so that nobody panics, everybody please hire her. Yes, we still need work. But let's say 2030, 2029, maybe there's that light at the end of the tunnel of okay, I need to just get through this 2029. And then I am going to be able to focus full time on the 2030, year of just ceramics and photography and community and all of that. But at the same time, you still have to financially support yourself, And then I do really want to talk about
this is where it brings us back to scarcity.
Yes, scarcity. I really want to talk about it because I feel like there's a disconnect, something that people are missing. And I want for everybody to feel the same way that I feel about it. So what is the concept of scarcity? It's that there's not enough of something, right? That there's the opposite of people think, the opposite of abundance, right? So when somebody's successful in many ways, they're selling a lot of pots, for example, that person is successful and that is affecting my ability to be successful.
Yeah, the metaphor that I always think of that might be helpful for people listening also is it's thinking of opportunity like pie. It's thinking of opportunities in the world if you take a bigger piece of the pie, there's less dessert left for me. And it's well, that's not true. But that is how, especially in the United States, we're taught to believe, 100%. Right? This competitive culture that we have, which is just, that's a connected but also very different conversation.
Yes, it is completely different. And I think that the problem is that when we think that this is what our life is, we're hurting ourselves in so many ways, but we're missing out on the opportunities to build meaningful relationships and to enjoy the beauty of this community that we have because we're so worried that somebody else who's succeeding is not going to be allowing me to succeed. And that's just not the reality of it. And I think I read it best or I listened to it. I can't even remember. I love Brene Brown. She's incredible. And she said something along the lines of that, and it's the abundance scarcity, that the opposite of scarcity is not abundance. The opposite of scarcity is enough. The opposite of scarcity is feeling like you're enough and there is enough and your kids are enough and everything's enough. I think that was actually a line that she said. And you know what? And that's what the reality of it is. It was a line that she said, that's the reality of it. The reality is that there is enough for everybody to go around. And we have a responsibility to ourselves to try and create the potential successes, of course. Nothing's going to fall into our laps. Nothing's going to come easy. That's just not the reality of life. Some people are more somehow, whatever it is, karma or whatever it is, predisposed to successes in an easier way for them. But at the bottom line, those people, they're not taking the success from me. They're successful. I can be successful. You can be successful. We can all be successful together. We can all lift each other up. There's zero benefit to believing in the concept of scarcity. Zero. It just encourages negativity. It encourages conflict. It encourages jealousy. Who needs that in their lives?
I also think that, again, I'm touching on deep American culture. I think it's wrapped up in consumerism too, right?
Oh,
because
yeah.
if we feel like we don't have enough, which, as you've said, is enough is the opposite of scarcity. So if we're surrounded by the scarcity mentality, that means we feel like we don't have enough, which means we need to get more. And get more can be purchasing things.
Yeah.
Get more can be, I don't know. The only example that just came into my mind, which is kind of hilarious, maybe applicable, is our propensity to want to buy a tool to fix a problem when actually the solution is just practicing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? And wanting to speed up that whole process.
That's relatable in pottery for sure as well. Oh, yeah.
But that is really just, that is just so connected with just buying things. And then if the solution to everything is buying things to fix the lack of enoughness. It means you have to have more money to buy more things, which then makes you feel like you don't have enough. And it just
feeds into itself.
Yeah.
Like a vicious cycle. And it's just sad to see and feel, not just see, because we all feel it. It's a natural instinct and a natural response, but it's so sad to feel and see these kinds of emotions and these kinds of feelings like jealousy and competitiveness taking over.
And fear, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, scarcity for me is like totally rooted in like fear of it not working out, right? Yeah. If business doesn't come into you, if I don't get another client, if you don't sell a bunch of more pots at the most recent market or whatever it is, then that means, you know, therapy would lead you down towards like, it means death.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It means you can't pay your bills. It means you're homeless.
Right.
It means you can't feed yourself. It means death.
Yeah.
Which isn't actually true.
No. We jump to the worst case scenarios. That's for sure. It's hard. It's tricky. And I don't think it's simple at all. I don't think it's simple to get past either. I think, though, having an understanding of like, where is this emotion stemming from? You ever scroll down Instagram and you get like a twinge of like, oh, that person's got so much engagement on that reel. Oh, man. And it's like, wait a second, Tzipporah. They can have engagement on their reel and you can have engagement on your reel. And one is not, you know, taking away from the other. And obviously, it's very tricky on Instagram because we've got a bajillion people on there and we are essentially set up to feel in some way or another like we're competing with the people around us for attention, for eyeballs. But again, not in our control. What's in our control is just what we put out there, in the same way that what's in our control is trying to make those sales and trying to, you know, set ourselves up for success. It's pointless almost to feel those feelings of like that jealousy, or because it doesn't get us anywhere. It just gets us feeling bleh.
Well, and the interesting thing is what I have been guilty of in the past and what I see happening to other people that breaks my heart is as we start to get those blah feelings, the energy that this is going to get a little woo, everybody, but it is valid. It is not super, we're not going down the law of attraction or anything. That's a whole different thing. But the energy you put out there is what you get back. And so if you're feeling like blah about what you're putting up on Instagram, or if you're feeling like, oh, so-and-so is so much better, like, woe is me. Well, you don't have to say that out loud for somebody to kind of feel that vibe. And then it doesn't help anything. It doesn't make you more quote unquote successful. It doesn't get you more sales because you're saying, oh, I need XYZ right now because things are really hard. It's like, well, okay, somebody might be like, oh, I want to support this person and help, but that's not necessarily a long-term psychology of why somebody wants to buy something. You don't want somebody to buy something because they feel bad.
No, definitely not. And it's interesting because when it comes to, and I'm looking at my husband who has arrived. Hi, thank you so much. I'm looking at him because he always says to me when it comes to, like, when I'm feeling anxious about things, he says to me, does it help you to feel worried about a potential outcome when you have no control over it? And I always say to him in response, it's not validating to my feelings when you say that to me. The fear is valid, but I understand what you're saying, that it's not actually helping anything. So I want to say the jealousy is valid. The fear is valid. That feeling of scarcity is valid, because also that's how we've been conditioned to feel. That's how we've been conditioned to work. Not in our hands at all. That's a societal problem over here. But it's valid to feel all of those things. And I feel those things and you feel those things and everybody feels those things. It's just a matter of understanding, where are these emotions coming from? It's like, it's more than just feeling it. I don't want to just feel it. I'll feel it. I'll acknowledge it. And then I want to understand more. Where is that coming from?
I am curious what you do to understand more, because for me and my like nerdy systems brain, this is why I love systems, because I can look at data for myself. I can look at my own data, nobody else's data, just my. So say, for example, we're talking about Instagram Reels. I can look and see, okay, in the last 30 days, I have whatever. Something has improved. I was working on, I don't know, let's just go with followers because it's the easiest example. We all need to stop obsessing about that, but that's a different story for a different time. So I can say, hey, I have increased my follower count by X percentage over the last 30 days. Clearly, I'm doing something right. Keep on keeping on. As opposed to let me compare my total account to your total account. And now I feel crappy because holy crap, Tzipporah only started this in 2019. I've got some catching up to do.
Wait. Take it back.
I'm kidding. If you have your own information to compare to, you're comparing it's like I used to always be told by a swimming coach. And let's be honest, I was a swimmer for a long time. I was a crap swimmer, you guys. I literally never won a race.
But you swam.
I swam competitively from like elementary school to high. Let's go with, I'm just going to round and say it was 6 to 8 years. So not a short period of time. I literally never ran a race, but it was always, people are always saying, well, you're competing against yourself, right?
Exactly.
If your time is improving, if whatever, that's a whole different conversation. But the point is, if you're looking at your own data, you're comparing yourself to yourself instead of yourself to the outside world that you don't actually have any information on.
No information on. When it comes to me personally, so I'm not like the way that my brain works is not data-based. I'm not analytical like that. And so when you ask, how do I, assess, like, where is this emotion coming from? I think that for me, talking about things helps me understand them. Talking through them helps me understand them. So if I have somebody that I trust, namely my husband, who like half listens because I do this to him all the time, and I'll just like talk. And I'll be like, and then I saw this, and then I was thinking, but you know what? The truth is that I didn't do this. And you know what? Actually, I wonder what, and then I just like have a whole dialogue with myself. Sometimes he always has wise things to say, but sometimes if he's listening fully, he'll have what to say. Talking to people that I trust about like that I trust to carry my emotions with kindness, it has always been helpful for me because I'm able to like get to the root of it in a healthy way for me. This is a healthy way for me. And so that helps me for sure. I think that also I agree with you in terms of the follower count. And I just this is like a little off, but I want to just touch on it. I gave a talk last week on social media to the Potter's Guild here in New Jersey. And it was a wonderful talk. And I always tend to loop in things about mental health because I think that it's very important that we concentrate on those things. And one of the things that I said was, first of all, the follower count literally means nothing. It is not about quantity. It is about quality. And also, it is such a silly goal, in my opinion, to have because A, it means nothing, but B, let me tell you that when I reached my goal at some point, whatever it was I want to reach 10K. I want to reach 10,000 followers. Why? I don't know. I don't know why. I don't even know.
Because at the time, Instagram was telling you that was it because you got all the extra features, you got all the things.
Whatever. Exactly. I was like, I got to reach 10K. I reached 10K. The day I reached 10K, I like looked around. I was with my family and I was like, I don't feel any different. I don't really care. It's not making my life better. And that was the point when I reached 10K where I was like, this is silly. Like, what is my goal here? Do I have goals for Instagram or am I using Instagram as a tool to achieve my goals? That was the question.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Is Instagram the goal or is Instagram the tool to achieve the goals? And so for me, at that 10K point was when I was like, okay, the goal is not Instagram. The goal is to use Instagram as a tool, and whether that tool is reach, teaching, credibility, it's so dumb, but it does offer some level of credibility.
Look, there are people getting book deals because they have a certain, perceived reach and credibility, but the goal was not necessary. Anyway, keep going.
Exactly. So I want to just say, and all that is just to say, like, you want to come on my profile and you want to see she has X amount of followers, whatever. I'm not going to tell you what to feel, but just be aware that it means literally nothing. It doesn't mean that I'm selling more. It doesn't mean that I'm reaching more. And you can have a lot of great insight. Go over to my reels and see how many people are seeing those reels. Sometimes it's 20,000 people. Sometimes it's 2,000 people. There's no rhyme or reason. I have no qualms about being honest about the fact that Instagram has not necessarily offered me tremendous success because it's a tool. I can use it to get myself to a place, or I can not use it to get myself to a place, but that's it. That's all that it is. It's like you're going to use a rib on your pot to get it to be a certain shape. Sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it's not. It's a tool. I use Instagram in the same way. And especially since right now in my life, I have 4 young children, 4 under 10. I am working my butt off to raise them and keep them healthy and happy and safe and feel loved. And that's my priority always. And pottery comes after that. You know what I mean? And so I hope that there'll be a time where I'll be able to focus on my success in pottery a little bit more. But for right now, I use the tools that I have. I use the time that I have. I just would never want somebody to look in at me and be like, oh my God, I want to be successful. She's so successful. Like, you don't know what somebody's actually experiencing. You've got no clue. And
that's exactly what I was thinking about when you were talking about seeing other people. You know, you were saying how sometimes karma, whatever reason, success comes easier to people. And I think when I look at so many people that I used to kind of aspire to in the event industry, it's like on the outside, the success, what I was using to mark success came easily to them. But as soon as you dug in a little bit and was like, their closest relationships are only within the industry. They don't actually have a personal life outside of that world, perhaps, as a possible example. Or like, they're actually really, I'm looking at them and their followers and, you know, exponential followers and seeing like, that's what I need. But actually they're feeling really lonely because they, you know, don't have engagement with that. You know, it's not an actual community. I saw a post recently and I forgot who said it, but they were talking about the difference between audience and community.
yeah,
And that an audience is a very transactional, non-engaged.
looking in. It's the outside looking in.
Yep. Whereas a community is a relationship, right? And I was like, yes.
And that's all we want. Or that's all that a lot of people that I've spoken with within the ceramics community want. Obviously, we can't generalize about anything, but my whole life, my whole experience as a religious woman, I'm an Orthodox Jew. My whole experience with that, it has always been community-based. We are very, very, we cycle around community. We cycle around connection. That's always what it is. The holidays, Shabbat every weekend, our family, our synagogue, everything is community-based. It was natural for me to then incorporate that in my experience in the pottery world. And I'm amazed that generally this is what most people want. Most people want that connection and that community. And, you know, it's something that we all crave. We all crave connection. We all crave relationships, meaningful conversation. Those are all important things. And for me on my Instagram page, I try and put content out there that is relatable and that is helpful and that is encouraging communication, encouraging community and meaningful conversation. These are things that I thrive on in my life. That's what I love. That's what I need. And so when we focus on all of those things, those positive emotions, those positive experiences, it allows for those negative ones to kind of fall to the background, become background noise, that like twinge of jealousy or that feeling of scarcity. Those things can fall to the back when we really focus our emotions on the things that are more important, the positive things, those positive experiences.
Do you feel like was there something that shifted your perspective around this mentality of scarcity? Because I think there's a couple of things where my brain goes. Number one, I think people, and myself included, think, okay, if I can learn enough, do enough, change my brain, this is no longer a problem. And I think that's a bit of a fallacy, right? I'm putting my story on you, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it never stops coming up. You just learn how to kind of turn it off or quiet it faster.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I don't think there's going to ever be a point where I personally am not going to feel a twinge of all of these things. Because first of all, that's healthy. We want to feel those things. It's normal. Our emotions are trying to teach us something. Like there's always something to learn when we feel something. So if I'm feeling that twinge of whatever it is, jealousy or scarcity or fear, I want to focus on that enough to know, like, what do I need to do for this? What I have tried to realize is, and I constant work in progress, is that when I put time and energy into things and I feel good about what I'm doing and I'm proud of what I'm doing, I can have 5 people like tell me, wow, this is great. Wow, thank you for this. Oh, this is so amazing. This was helpful. Let's say, for example, I'm going to give a very specific example because it makes sense for what we're talking about. I love teaching pottery. And as mentioned earlier, I strongly disliked teaching young children. I love teaching adults pottery. And I did not know that would be something that I would love doing. I absolutely love it. It brings me so much tremendous joy. And so when I started putting videos out on Instagram that were like more educational, informative videos, and regardless of if it was 5 people, if it was 500 people, regardless, I felt so much joy, so much happiness, so much fulfillment from like truly helping somebody, making a difference. And then again, it all fosters that connection, that community. And so what I feel is when I'm really proud of the things that I'm doing and when I feel really good about the work that I'm putting out there, even if I'm not selling pots and even if I'm not reaching the amount of people that I would ideally like to reach, whatever that means, I feel good about it. And so my brain is not focusing on the feeling of like, I'm not being successful enough or somebody else is being successful and I'm not. And they're doing the same thing as I am and they're, reaching more people. It doesn't even focus on that because I'm too busy focusing on how proud I am of myself. And you know what? I don't know. Does that sound awful? I hope not, because we should focus on those things. This is not coming from a place of like ego. It's coming from a place of pride in the work that I'm putting in. You know what I mean?
It reminds me of when I would audition for something for music, like for whatever competition or whatever, auditioning for colleges, whatever it was. When I knew I had prepared as much as I reasonably could have, I went in there with very little nerves. I mean, you're always going to have some level of nerves, right? Like what nobody saw at NCICA when I was speaking was I wore that blazer on purpose because I was like schwitzing underneath.
There was also a lot of people and a small space.
The room was very hot, clearly. That was why. That was why. But, I don't think I completely let that on. So when I knew I was prepared for something, I could come in with a certain level of calmness and a lack of nerves. But when I had to audition for something and I knew I hadn't actually practiced the way that I should have, and it was kind of like, well, we'll see, then the nerves kicked in and then everything mattered, right? Then it was like, oh my gosh. So not similar metaphor, but completely connecting with what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I think that it just comes down to like overall confidence in what we're doing. And listen, confidence doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. It's something that we all need to work on. You know what I mean? But I think that when we feel that pride and when we feel that confidence in the things that we're doing and the things that we're putting forth, we can foster the success in so many different ways with hard work. We can get there, but that feeling of scarcity falls to the background for me when I know I'm doing my best, when I'm really doing my best and I'm not sitting on my butt waiting for success to come to me. And you know what? The reality of my life right now is that I'm not necessarily doing my best for my pottery life because I'm doing my best for my home life. So, and I can't do both. And I always say that I cannot do everything. I do not do everything. Fostering that success for pottery does fall to the wayside now. And hopefully that's a short-term thing. As my kids get older, they're going to need different parts of me. Right now, I'm physically very, very present because that's what they need. You know what I mean? Emotionally, obviously, is a different thing. But I think that when I do put my best foot forward, when I do try my best and I work my hardest and I am putting in whatever, I don't want to say 100% because it's very hard to even quantify what that means. But when I'm doing what I feel is my best at that moment, using the tools that I have at my disposal at that moment, the emotional capacity, the physical capacity, I feel proud of what I've done. And the rest just falls to the wayside. You know what I mean? In the moments when I really, really am noticing, I'm focusing 100% of myself on my family and I have very little left to focus on pottery. Those are the moments when those voices are the loudest, where I'm like, oh, they're selling so much. Oh, they're being so successful. I'm there. Oh, and well, yeah, Tzipporah, you haven't done anything. You know what I mean? Like, so obviously someone else is going to be more successful than you. You're not doing anything.
Also, are you comparing yourself to somebody else who has 4 kids under the age of 10?
Also,
or are you comparing yourself to
Yeah, also no.
childless individuals? That's why I go back to the data, because that's not a fair comparison.
And there is no way to truly compare yourself to another person. No way. Because we're not just talking present moment. What do I have in my life right now? Even if I am comparing myself to a mom of 4 boys under 10 who lives in New Jersey, whose husband had this, even if I am, let's say hypothetically, we did not have the same childhood experiences. We do not have the same tools, emotional tools and physical tools at our disposal. There's no no matter what, like there's this concept in parenting I'm going to bring in. Unless it's about parenting, I try not to get too all in because it's where most of my information actually is in the parenting world. But there's this concept where let's say you see your two kids fighting, right? And it's clear to you that one of them is at fault. Like that one started it. And I don't know if he's awake or asleep, but I say this to them all the time where I'll see like, oh, this one started it. Okay. But I'm not going to chime in at that moment and say, hey, I saw you punch him in the face. I saw that happen. Like, what was that all about? Because I did not see what happened from when they woke up this morning until this point. I did not see who poked who first, and then who took the other one's toy, and then who ate the other one's snack, and then who pushed the other one against the wall, and then who... I didn't see all of the emotional baggage lead up that they're carrying with them since the beginning of the day. I only saw this one moment. And that is the reality for everything in all of our lives, especially when it comes to social media, which is the best and the worst thing that has happened to our time, where we are looking from the outside in and we are saying, I see what they have now and they're successful now. And so I'm feeling jealous, or I'm feeling like if they're succeeding, then I can't succeed. But when the reality of the situation is, even if we look the same and we sound the same, we are not the same. We don't know what has led us both to this point and, you know, what's going to be in the future. It's like, it's never simple. I think at the bottom line, it's just never as simple as our brains want to simplify it to be. It's just never that simple.
Agreed completely, and is a much more beautifully put way of like why I started these conversations in the first place, like why the podcast started. Because it was like, hold on a second. I see what you're putting out there, but how does that actually work? Right? Like it's always the question.
Yeah.
So in that vein, I want to get a little bit pragmatic with the time that we have left. I don't know what your schedule is like today, so I want to be respectful of that time. Just to give people a little insight, since we have talked about the fact that you have 4 young boys, you're fitting in pottery when you can, but at the same time, you're both self-employed. So I'm kind of like, so hold on a second. How does this work day to day? It seems like such a silly, like I've heard it on other podcasts and I try not to ask the question, but day to day, week to week, month to month, whatever range of time you want to choose, what does life look like for the two of you and for kind of building this life first, logistics second kind of value-based home and life for you?
So are we talking like from a financial perspective?
I think you take it. I purposely left that vague.
Okay. Purposely left it vague. So
I will always ask the finance questions because I'm like, how the hell does it work? But wherever you want to go with it is totally fine.
Okay, so there's a lot to say here. First of all, my husband and I have always had we've always agreed on this thing where we want our lives to be full of beautiful experiences, beautiful memories built, healthy and loving moments together as a family. Notice how none of that was grand vacations, brand new spanking new car, big beautiful mansion. Like none of those neither of us are materialistic people. And so I think everybody has like of materialism inside of them always, and everybody wants to look and feel good and present their best selves. But we have never been that way, and in like on a grander scale. And because of that, it's natural for us to focus more intensively on the emotional experience side of our lives. It's quality of life. And that's what it comes down to. We live in a country where people equate quality of life to financial status and to monetary belongings. But when it comes down to it, for us, that's not the case. We equate quality of life to emotional state and experiences and memories that were built in with our family. I think that I come from a religious home. I come from a religious background. I was always raised with a concept of gratitude and of presence and of appreciation for what we have, and having an understanding that nothing is permanent and everything is fleeting, and that is on a minute-to-minute basis, and that is on a lifelong basis. And so I think that because of that, we have always been able to focus on, or we are mostly able to focus on having the best lives that we can have from a very meaningful place and a very meaningful perspective. And then we focus on that for our kids. We focus on that for each other. So we're always kind of working on our relationships with ourselves and our kids and each other. And then when it comes to like practically, how do we make it work? Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, So what does that mean? That means that sometimes I add things to my cart on a website online or on Amazon or something. And then I'm like, nope, this is not a need. You know, what do we really, really need? We really need food, and we really need gas in our car, and we really need to be able to pay our bills. That is it. And by bills, I don't mean my credit card bill. I mean like as well, but like, I mean like air, water, like when it comes down to it, like truly from a very practical perspective, what do we need? Everything else is not so much what we need, it's what we want. And so there are moments in time when we're on a need basis, and there are moments in time when we have that ability to have more of what we want. But having those moments where we're financially much tighter and we really need to count those pennies, those moments lead us into a place when we do have a little bit of more of a space to be able to say, like, even though we can, like, should we? Like, maybe we can just spend this on something else, something more memory building, or maybe we can not spend it and just save it, you know? So I think that is what we do in terms of balancing things. But then when it comes to like very, very practically financially, how do we manage? Thankfully, summertime, as you know, is the very busiest season for a photographer. And so, you know, he's crazy busy in the summers, and the summer is what carries us over most of the year. And then basically we're just very financially aware of what we're spending, and we don't spend loosely. And when it comes to the kids, it's like we really try and focus on what is bringing meaning into our lives. And that doesn't mean anybody's feeling deprived or anybody's not getting new nice things. That's not what that means. It just means like really focusing on what's important. What it comes down to, I think, is just, and this is the overall theme again, is like working on our emotional health and our emotional growth. And that is something, especially at a time right now where we're at this crazy time in this world where everything is at our fingertips, everything is so easy and to access, and everything is so easy to buy, and everyone's upgrading to the newest thing, and everybody's always, you know, showing off and stuff like that. And I think that because of that, he said, like Teslas, yes, like Teslas, you know, like we're super happy with our 2013 Honda Pilot. As a matter of fact, I am gonna cry the day that I have to give that car in and switch it out for another used but beautifully working car. You know what I mean? It's about those values. And I think that for me, it comes a little bit more naturally, only because it is how we were raised. It is within the parameters of focusing on more of an emotional and a spiritual part of our lives, not from a place of less, but rather from a place of more in the more important things. So that's pretty much like, that's the rundown of how it works in our home. I always say this, there's no such thing as balance. I don't believe in balance. I believe in juggling. I believe that we're all just juggling things. So it's a matter of like, we're juggling. His work, you know, is a busier season now, which means my work is going to be a less busy season because I need to be all hands on deck for the kids. And then, you know, at times when he's less busy, I'm able to, let's say, take a vacation for myself to fill my own cup. So these are all like it's not balance because there's no such thing, and it's not so pretty. Like, I feel like balance is like so calm. Like, juggling is messy because that's what life is. And like, maybe we're going to drop something.
I had a coach once, though, tell me, and I think you'll appreciate this. I had a coach once tell me balance is, in a way, nothingness. Like, if you were perfectly balancing work compared to personal life, if you were in perfect balance, he was like, that is effectively being on the plane and not being where you left and not being at your destination yet. You're in neither place, and that is balance. And I was like, what a like unlocking metaphor for me, you know, because he was saying more so the goal in his mind, at least, and pertinent to the conversation we were having, was like, when you're at work, be at work 100% all in. Because then if you're fully present in that moment, when you leave, you then are fully present to your family, to your loved ones, to your friends, to whatever you're doing, right? It's being completely where you are when you're there, which is complete and utter imbalance, right? It's like the teeter-totter is completely tipped, and then it completely tips the other way.
Exactly.
And there's no, like, a teeter-totter's not fun if you're just like hanging out in the middle.
Exactly.
It's less painful if you are riding it with your older cousins, but
there's less of a chance of falling when you're in that balance. But you know what? There's also less of a chance of experiencing anything fully. You're not.
Right.
And that is so true. And that is so true. You give 100% of yourself wherever you're at, or whatever that means. Again, I try not to say 100% because nobody can actually give, with the abilities and the capabilities and the tools and everything that we have in that very moment, just doing our very best in each situation. And like when you play soccer, yes, we do our best. And then we're able to really appreciate where we're at in that moment. And then we can also appreciate it even more when we're outside of that moment. And I think that all of this is just repeating this. I keep hitting my cap. It's just repeating all of this is just repeating the same thing, that as long as we're being mindful and as long as we're thinking about how we are emotionally, how we are physically, looking inward, I think that that's only going to help us in everything outward.
Oh, so good. I also just want to clarify where my brain is, which is not nearly as like poetic and beautiful as where you just ended. So I shouldn't have even I should have just ended there and not followed up. But it does sound like, knowing the schedule so well, it also sounds like when you talk about being, I think you both are in full-time parent, part-time business mode. It sounds like, based upon the seasons, and maybe this is the assumption, that, okay, in the summer when it's busy for him, he's full-time in work, you are full-time with the kids. But then when there's seasons in winter, when he's slower, that teeter-totter kind of changes so that you can maybe, hopefully, have more time with the pottery side of things that you're doing for your own profession, to kind of just the pragmatics of like how the two of you together manage family and businesses.
Yeah.
Because I think on the outside looking in, people assume self-employment, you have more flexibility, you have more scheduling, whatever, which is true to a point.
Exactly.
But I know, and on the flip side, it also means you don't have the infrastructure that someone else does in terms of having like an IT department or a marketing department, or, you're doing all of the things all at the same time. And so time can also feel less flexible because you're so pulled in so many different
directions. And you
directions.
also can never shut off because it's not a 9 to 5. It's not somebody else's responsibility. Everything is always your own responsibility. Everything is always on your shoulders. So it's interesting because, my husband is much more analytical. So when we talk about the division of labor or the balance of things or trying to juggle things together, he always goes for this like percentage, which is maybe why I have an aversion to it. But
and it's not realistic, I know, as an analytical person.
Yes. But it's a good way of understanding. And he's always like, you can't deny it's a good way of understanding things. No, I can't deny that. You're right. So let me tell you what we've said in the past and where we're at right now. So in the past, like I want to say 2 kids ago, it was a very clear division of labor. It was like house and home was like 98% me, 2% Chaim. Kids was like 70% me, 30% Chaim, because he is our main source of income. Even now, he is our main source of income.
99% her. 1%.
Food, yes, food is included in house and home. You're right. Yes. Food, 99% me, 1% Chaim. And then income was just 100% him. And so that is how it was, I want to say, like pre-pottery, 3-4 kids. And it was very clear, and we were both very happy with that division because we were both using our strengths and we were both respecting each other's what we're offering for our home and our family. Now, at this point, now that I have something that I'm so passionate about and that I want to spend so much time in, it's much less simple. And so this whole percentages goes out the window because it's just a matter of seasons and a matter of communication and a matter of respecting each other's wishes and schedules, of course. So I think that because of that, it's just less simple and more communication. So yes, in the summertime, he needs to have the times that he's working and the times that he's got the actual jobs. And then he's got there's pre-work, there's post-work. It's crazy. People assume a photographer just is, oh, you're so flexible because you're just taking that one wedding a week, let's say. And that's like,
what do you do the rest of the week if you only work on Saturdays or Sundays or,
And that's what people think. And it's like, guys, you don't even know. There is so much work. There is so much pre-work and so much post-work. So in these seasons, he is so busy that even though he's going to try and be present, he's going to try and be around, he does his best. And yes, like you said, flexibility to a point, he really needs to focus on the work side of things. And so it is definitely that, like, trying to find that new juggling space where we're at in each season, in each moment, because with kids are unpredictable. Sometimes there's a kid home sick. And sometimes that means that I know you were supposed to do whatever it is that you wanted to do or your work that you were trying to get done, but I had something pre-scheduled. That means we need to just reassess. And having maybe, I don't know, maybe the fact that he's self-employed and so he's naturally more flexible with his work schedule, and I'm self-employed, so I'm naturally more flexible. So I think that we're able to kind of like be more flexible together, and we take it, we honestly take it like week by week, because that's just the reality of kids and family life. And we communicate with each other and we respect each other's needs. And that's what it comes down to. It's not simple. It's not, it's not pretty. Sometimes it's really not pretty. Sometimes we cancel plans and sometimes we, have to, but that's just the reality of it.
That's amazing. That makes me feel not so far off, which is like, yes, there's more of us out there.
Oh yeah.
Francesco recently said, he said it multiple times to me because I'm still working on it, but I think you'll appreciate this just for your own values as well. As he said, I'd rather have more time together today than more money tomorrow.
Oh, 100%.
And I was like,
yes. That's exactly what it is. I agree with what your husband said, 100%. I think it's everything. At the bottom line, what do we walk away from this life with? Literally nothing physical. And I understand the argument of, we want our lives to be as comfortable as possible. First of all, let's just say for a hot second, there's nothing wrong with a little discomfort.
Okay, I was going to wrap this up, but I have to point this out. Dear friends of mine who I love and respect literally are part of a group called like Men and Women of Discomfort. Like the goal is to purposely put yourself into discomfort to be reminded of it. And like it's coaching and whatever. And I get the value. But it's like waking up at 5 a.m., working out first thing, cold showers, all of that. On the flip side, same person I know who has done this group, sorry, Jeff, I love you, has status with Delta, flies business class. And I'm like, okay, but like you could do that without being you could experience this by flying economy. It's so different. And this is the thing that helps my brain as well, as you're comparing yourself to other people and thinking like, if I had worked a different job for 13 years, we'd have a different level of financial success or whatever. It's like choosing which discomforts you want is different than like there just having to be certain discomforts in life.
Exactly.
Choosing a cold shower is different than like if I want to take this vacation, which is a luxury also for one.
Oh, yes.
If I want to fly here, I have to fly economy because I don't have whatever to going to Israel, going to Australia in economy for 12 hours, totally different experience.
Oh, yeah. The most basic difference between choosing discomfort and like just this is life discomfort, it comes from a place of privilege, and which is amazing. I'm so. It is always hard to be a kid. I agree. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
100%.
But I think that when we have privilege, when we are able to choose to that, oh yeah, I want to be uncomfortable, so I'm going to take an ice bath or wake up real early and work out. That's amazing because you are reminding yourself, but you're also like, let's just remember, this is highlighting the fact that you're in a place of privilege. And I don't want to say that that's necessarily a bad thing. I just want to highlight that you're in a place of privilege. And so you're able to do that.
You're choosing it.
You're choosing it. Exactly. Whereas I'm not choosing financial instability sometimes, but while I'm in that space of financial instability, I'm going to choose to be grateful for what I do have. And I'm going to choose to focus on the things that I do have control over in this moment. And I'm going to choose to live a meaningful life regardless of what the circumstances are, whether they're comfortable or they're uncomfortable. I'm only in control of the things that I do. And this is like a good wrap up because I'm in control. When I see something on Instagram that's making me feel a twinge of something bad, I'm in control of how I react to that. And that's the bottom line is like, what are we going to do? What's going to be our choice? What's going to be our next step from here? Are you going to acknowledge it or are you just going to dive deeper, which, oh my God, we've all done, where it's like, oh, I feel so bad about myself, and I'm just gonna, I know my thumb, oh my God, and I'm just gonna scroll more and I'm gonna feel worse about myself? Or am I gonna stop and I'm gonna talk to somebody about it, or am I gonna look at the data and am I gonna say, this is where this is coming from, and now what am I gonna do about it?
Oh, so good. I can keep going on forever because we're also clearly both verbal processors. All right, well, so clearly you and I just need to travel somewhere together.
Oh, yeah. Someplace far, far away.
The poor person in the third seat, because we will be flying economy, will just have to, join in.
Yes, exactly. Or put on headphones.
Options. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. There's so much more. Oh, God, there's just like a million other things we could dig into. For people that don't know, that want to connect more, that want a touch of reality on that Instagram scroll, where is the best place to send them on the internet to connect with you?
Well, my Instagram is Tzipporah.ceramics, SIPOR. And I always answer messages, and they're responding to they're responding to comments is more of an eventually, as he said, eventually, because that's a little bit harder for me, but the messages I get to right away because, like I said, I thrive on this. I love this. I love making our world a little bit smaller, connecting with people. So yeah, that's basically where you can find me. I'm not going to give my home address. I feel like that's not safe.
No, you should definitely just the internet.
I'm just kidding.
I have a story for you about that on another day.
Okay.
I'll send you an audio message.
I'm waiting for it. Amazing. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thanks for you.
I'll be listening, he said.
Clearly, I need to have Tzipporah's eldest back on the podcast for his very own interview because he was throwing us so many gems of insight throughout our whole conversation. So if you loved this chat, please be sure to share it with your maker friends. Feel free to take a screenshot of whatever podcast app you're listening to or share one of my past posts on Instagram. Do whatever you want to do. But just don't forget to tag me at The Maker's Playbook and Tzipporah at Tzipporah.ceramics so we can send our thanks. And if you're listening along in real time, next week is our off week, where no new episode comes out on the podcast, but instead I send out our monthly free photo tip to the makers on our email list. So be sure to come over to makersplaybook.com/newsletter to add your email to that list if you haven't done so already. And if you aren't listening in real time, don't worry about it because the link still works. And I have an entire archive of the last 2 years of monthly photo tips now online, which, as I'm saying this, I realize I need to create a short version of that URL because it's really long and complicated and would sound absolutely ridiculous to read out loud. So if you're listening to this at whatever point in time and are thinking, oh my gosh, I missed 2 years of photo tips, I need that archive, just shoot me a DM on Instagram or an email to podcast@makers-playbook.com. and I will send you the correct link to get a free account and dive into all of those tips. Done is better than perfect, right, my friends? This episode was made possible in part by our sponsor, Amco.
Hi, I'm Kara, content creator and Facebook wrangler for Amico Brent, bringing you ideas and support for your creative adventures every day. This week's episode is brought to you by Amico Brent. Find your favorite Amico glaze at your local distributor. Happy glazing!
Audio post-production of this podcast is made possible by help from Christy Kotzfun, with promotional material assistance from Queenie Maliki. The Maker's Playbook podcast is recorded on the original homelands of the Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee people, where the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. Until next time, my friends, go get back to making your dreams a reality. Because together, we've got this.